I know. I love that.
That's exciting. Yeah. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. If this is your first time seeing me, you may not realize that this show, Chef AJ Live, which airs live 7 days a week, was created out of the pandemic. When the pandemic started, I don't remember the first day, I think it was March 20th that we were told, at least in California, that we had to start sheltering in place. I tried to go live to my private group, but not being very good with technology, ended up going live everywhere. People seemed to like it, appreciated the connectivity, the connection, the community. And so I realized I can't just do it myself because I'm getting a little bored here in my self-talk. So my friends started coming on. And luckily, because I work in the plant-based space, a lot of my friends are very well-known doctors, chefs. And the very first guest that came on the show, she came on actually 2 days in a row when she was interning at the True North Health Center, is Dr. Niki Davis. And one time we were like in our pajamas. It was 10 o'clock at night because at the beginning of the pandemic, people were really freaking out and they really wanted the connection. So she's been on the show 3 times since, and now she's back for episode 359. That's how long I've been doing it. And she's got some really exciting things coming up. She's actually going to be doing a virtual retreat, but she's actually here to talk about how we can achieve our health goals in the new year, which is less than a week away. Please welcome back Dr. Niki Davis.
Thank you, AJ. I appreciate it. It's so good to be back. And it's so funny to think back to when you and I were talking in my pajamas. I don't think you were in yours, but I was in mine. I think we had been trying to get online that day and just couldn't make it work. And so we kind of gave up. And I think I was getting ready to get into bed and you said, hey, I think I got it working. Let's try it out. And we ended up doing a show. So it was a lot of fun.
You were such a trooper to do that. It was so fun. And then it just set the stage for more and more people to come on. And then, like you had mentioned to me before we went on, don't you ever take a day off? I'd like to. And I have one scheduled for March 2021, but I don't like to turn people down when they want to be on the show. So I'm booked, I think, till March 27th or something. And then I'm going to figure out whether I need to do the show 7 days a week. Maybe I can do some pre-record. I actually don't know how to really do them pre-recorded. That's the funny thing. It's just easier to push the go live button. So yeah, the new year, so many people make resolutions and goals. And then I hear something like by Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, which is the 3rd weekend of January, it's all gone. So,
I know. I agree. I think all of us have that end of the year kind of, we don't eat as well as we'd like. And maybe some of us have gained a little bit of weight. And I know that that's true for so many people, even just in COVID times, to have gained some weight. But typically at the end of the year, it's just hard. You know, you go to a lot of parties and you hang out with a lot of people, not as much this year because of COVID again, but you tend to overindulge and things like that. And so it's normal that fresh new start, you want to start the year and you want to eat better and exercise more and things like that. So I know for a lot of people, including me, it's just a time to kind of reflect on what it is that you want your 2021 to look like. I'm sure a lot of us have thought about that, what we want 2021 to look like. Probably nothing like 2020.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to achieve our health goals in 2021, especially for those that are without health. Because I think one thing the pandemic has taught us is that you need health. You need a good immune system, because regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, the fact is that people that are less healthy don't do as well if they get COVID. That everybody agrees on that. There's no magic there. That, you know, when you have a weakened immune system for whatever reason, being overweight or having one of these lifestyle diseases, the comorbidities, these are the people that are not faring as well.
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head. You know, we look at all these comorbidities that put people at increased risk of having more serious complications from COVID, and it's diabetes, it's hypertension, which is high blood pressure, it's obesity, it's pro-inflammatory states in your body that can cause you to, you know, be in a place where you just aren't going to fare as well. And the good news is that it's a pretty simple thing that you can do to combat any of those issues. And it's simply just changing your lifestyle. So I say this like it's so simple, but I know, AJ, I wanted to talk about, first of all, just being vegan. So you and I both are vegan. And I know some people might say, well, yeah, plant-based vegan, but I would say vegan is a different animal. So no pun intended.
A vegan is no animal.
So you and I both, I think, have been vegan for decades. I think you have been vegan longer than I have, but we're both in the same boat here where we both went vegan first. Is that right?
Absolutely. 43 and a half years.
Awesome. So yeah, you have me beat for sure. But I would say that a lot of people are kind of turning on to veganism and being plant-based due to COVID. But I think also it's just been trending that direction for the last several years. And they even have something that started in 2014 in the UK called Veganuary. I'm sure you've heard of that, Chef AJ. But basically, it's a way that if you are looking to make a resolution to go vegan or go plant-based in the new year, this is a way to do it. So they have a website that you can go to. They give you all the free tools that you need. It's totally free, but they give you 30 days worth of recipes, and they give you all the tools and kind of little tricks and hints as to how to go vegan. So that's kind of a fun thing that people can get onto for January if you're looking to go vegan. Now, veganism it's different than plant-based in my mind, because vegan it's a life choice. You're living your life a certain way. So it's not just about eating vegan, but it's about not wearing leather, using animal products or anything like that. So AJ and I think we both transitioned to more whole food plant-based over the years. We're still vegan, but just healthier vegan. So I don't know about you, but I started out eating vegan, but it was more about eating similar to what I knew. So making substitutions, but also eating kind of some of the things that were available that maybe weren't as healthy that are still vegan. You know, I mean, there's so many things that are vegan out there that are not healthy, like Oreos and French fries and things like that. But over time, I did my own research and ultimately transitioned over to 100% plant-based and whole food plant-based as well. So that's more where you're looking at getting foods that aren't processed. You're not looking at the faux meats, the faux cheeses, the vegan butters and all those kinds of things. And you're looking to get foods that are grown in the ground, or you can pick off a tree and things like that. So I ultimately transitioned to that just out of research and wanting to be healthy. And after I saw the huge benefits of going that way, I decided to quit my job as an engineer. I actually worked for a rocket company, and decided just to quit my job and go back to school. I've been to school for so long, I can't even count now, but going back and getting my medical degree so that I could help others achieve these goals of changing their lifestyle by eating plants. So that's kind of how I got started. And then of course you can go one step further. And I think that ultimately, I think it's very important to give up the oils. So some people think it's okay. Some people think it's not. I definitely am on the no oils whatsoever. They're highly processed. First of all, you've got to crunch a bunch of olives down to just get 1 teaspoon of olive oil. And if you're looking for the health benefits from olive oil, you just eat the olive if you think that it's going to be beneficial, because ultimately the olive has some fiber in it. And if you're just crushing it down into the oil, that's just 100% fat. That's just fat that you're stripping out of that plant food. So getting rid of the oils is very important. And that I learned mostly about when I was working with Dr. McDougall. So I had a chance, as you said, to go and work with him at one of his McDougall programs in 2016 as a medical student. That was amazing. And I felt like I ate pretty well already, but being thrust into eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, my cholesterol dropped 20 points that week. It was amazing. So, and I saw the benefits of just being really adherent to that. And then so then you and I had talked when I was at True North, and they are not only oil-free, but SOS. I think that they coined that term. Maybe you were part of that.
No, Dr. Goldhamer, he always says that's the international symbol of distress. And I really appreciate you talking about oil, because there's just been an upsurge of all the plant-based doctors not, saying it's good and it's essential. And like you said, if there was something in it that we needed, it would be in the whole food.
Well, and it's not like you can just find a bottle of oil under a tree that a tree has created for you. It's just not natural. So in my mind, if it's not something that is naturally grown and produced by nature, it doesn't make a lot of sense to eat it. And especially to think that it's something you need. I can understand if people really want to eat it and they don't mind having the problems with health because of it, but there's no reason to think that you need it. People have been here for so long and no one ever needed oil. So
Yeah. And like I say, even if there is something in it that people think is beneficial, I've never seen it work for weight loss. I have never seen adding oil to any kind of diet help people lose weight.
no, absolutely not. No. So then with the SOS from Alan Goldhamer, so that includes salt, oil, and sugar. So I would say if you're looking at what's the most important, it's going to be the oil, the O. And then next, I would probably say sugar and then salt after that. But I also see the benefit of being SOS-free because when I went and interned at True North in March of this year, I had to go completely SOS-free just because I was eating the food there. And I happily did it because their food was amazing. I loved it from day one. I had no problem eating that food. I know some people who would come in who had been on the standard American diet, the SAD diet, would have an issue with thinking that things tasted a little bit bland in the beginning. But ultimately, everyone I talked to who thought that the food was bland in the beginning, once they got past that initial week or so, they loved the food. And I loved every bit of it. And I also saw the benefit of going completely SOS free from, I had a snowboarding accident when I was 30 and I had some back pain and it just bothered me off and on for the last so many years. And it initially, when I got there, it started hurting me again. And it was something that hadn't bothered me in a little while, but it hurt initially. And then the pain completely went away and I haven't felt it since. So it's kind of an interesting thing to happen. And I know that with people who fast there, that's actually a common occurrence that they'll have some back pain initially, but that ultimately it will go away and they have improved pain from not only if they have had an accident in the past, but especially people who have arthritis, things like that. So those are kind of the tiers. We're talking about veganism, plant-based, whole food, plant-based, oil-free, and then SOS-free. And I think there's definitely a spectrum there of what people are looking for and what their goals are. So I just wanted to kind of mention for people's health goals in 2021, for people who are looking to go from just kind of the standard American diet to going vegan or plant-based, you could try the Veganuary. You can try going vegan first and then kind of transitioning to more whole food, plant-based. I would recommend that ultimately the goal should be whole food, plant-based, because there are still issues with just trying to eat a vegan diet alone with, like I mentioned before, kind of some of the false or the faux meats and cheeses.
No, I think that was a great Freudian slip, the false meats. I love it. I love it. I know, those of us that are more in the health arena, gosh, I don't know about you, Dr. Davis, but we take so much criticism from people that are not saying but you make it so hard for people to be vegan if you don't let them have oil. And it's like, I don't understand. Other than eating at restaurants, why is it hard? You just don't use oil. It tastes better. It's cheaper. It's healthier. I mean, we already have a question like, do you think, let me read it exactly. Stephanie says, does Dr. Davis think olive oil is needed to help with macular degeneration?
No. Nope. There's no reason that oil would be beneficial for that at all. In fact, I think it could be harmful because oil is so high in fat. It gets right into your bloodstream. You can look at you could take blood from someone who has maybe fasted overnight and you look at their blood and once it separates out, you can see kind of a little fatty layer. And then you can give them a high fat diet and then take their blood after and then look, and there's so much more fat in there. I mean, that fat goes from where you're putting it into your mouth, it goes directly into your bloodstream. So you imagine that if you got all this thick fat kind of going through all of your arteries and veins, that ultimately, if you're looking at macular degeneration, which is in the eye, and you've got all these tiny little vessels that are trying to feed blood and oxygen to your eye, that mucking that up with fat is just not helpful at all. So I don't think it's helpful for any sort of disease process to include olive oil.
Yeah, I just wonder where this whole idea of eating oil as a food started. I mean, never throughout human history did anyone eat oil. I mean, you can't make it. You can't make it in your own kitchen. You can take an orange and squeeze it and get orange juice. You can't squeeze an olive and get olive oil, or squeeze a piece of corn and get corn oil. I mean, to me, it's just like they say, a triumph of marketing over science. I like how Dr. Wes Youngberg, who's been on the show, calls it hypercaloric malnutrition.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yep.
Yeah, I think what happens is because it has so many calories. I don't know, people like it for the the dopamine, the high fat, high calorie foods, but in and of itself, it tastes terrible. Have you ever tasted oil by itself? It's not very good.
No, it's not at all. I mean, it's just that layer that it puts on your tongue. It's just, yeah, it's not good. But I can see that, yeah, when it's mixed into foods, your body is naturally adept at wanting to get extra calories, because it wasn't always that we had ample food ready for us at any moment. We can just drive anywhere and get food. It used to be that it was difficult to find food, and especially once the weather started turning cold, to find food. And so when your body is able to find a food source where it's a little bit more calorically dense, it makes you feel good when you have something like that. But for us, we don't need that calorically dense food every day, all day, which is what most Americans are doing right now.
Yeah. And one of the things I've heard, I've had, certain clients that never could lose weight on the program. That's what they said, but they were always eating out. And for some of the people that actually stopped eating at restaurants, it really was the first time that they've lost weight, because restaurants use more oil than you ever would use at home.
Absolutely. So much oil, and especially the vegan restaurants, all these restaurants that you hope is able to feed you some good plant foods, but a lot of them just have a lot of oil in it. And the other thing that they have, AJ, is salt. And salt is one of those things that I think it's not good to have a lot of. I think maybe a little here and there, but even then, when you eat salt, it kind of makes your taste buds hyper aware, and I think it can actually cause you to eat more when you're eating salt. So even if you're eating the right foods, you end up eating more. So I think that extra salt is another thing that I don't think is needed in the diet at all.
Well, you're not the only one that thinks that, because apparently there's been published research saying that people that eat salt eat about 11% more calories in their food, usually from fat. And they call it, what's the word? Passive overconsumption.
Yes.
That's what Dr. Goldhamer calls it.
Yeah.
I got the research article from Dr. Oliveira, and it really is an appetite stimulant. And one thing I learned hosting the GI Health Summit, I didn't know that it actually depletes the bowel. Dr. Goldhamer was saying it dehydrates the bowel. I didn't know that salt had that effect. I just stopped using it because it does make me eat more. It's because it makes the food taste better, way better. Yeah. And that's not what I want. So, right. But once you get used to it without salt, then it's doesn't taste that good with it, to be honest. But people aren't willing to go through that process of a few days to a few weeks of not having things be hyper-stimulating. So
right. Well, and I got to enjoy that firsthand just by staying at True North. It was just kind of by accident that I got to enjoy food without salt and get to see that it was just fine without. So while I was there, I got to use different things that I learned about, we loved using just the ground sumac berries. Have you tried that?
No, but you told me about it, and I keep forgetting to do that. But that sounds amazing. But there's so many good salt-free. I mean, even good old Mrs. Dash, which I don't use because it has black pepper and I'm allergic to it. There's been salt-free seasonings around, not the fake kind like potassium chloride, but there's so many companies now. Dylan Holmes from Well Your World has wonderful ones now, and Local Spicery and Benson's Table Tasty. So you don't have to do without flavor. It's just people want that. That's because if they're looking for food for stimulation, they're not going to get it from the non-salt seasonings.
Right. So, but yeah, and then going back to kind of making those health choices for the new year. So I think that if someone has decided that they want to transition from either eating kind of a typical American diet or even a vegan diet to more whole food plant-based, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult. And I think that we also are similar in this point where I like to eat the same thing over and over. I like to make very simple meals. I have a family that I feed, and I don't like to get overcomplicated with recipes. And so for me, it's not about, oh, what am I going to eat? And I've got to figure out this plant-based food. It's so simple now that it's kind of based into my life. And I think that the main thing for people is to start out by, you got to remove all the offending products out of the house. That's number one, because those products that are in your house, even if you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat that after January 1st, if it's in your house, it's really hard not to eat it. So if you've got something in your pantry, in your fridge that is a meat, a cheese, an oil, a butter, sour cream, cream cheese, any of those kinds of things, I would just say either donate it to someone who you think could use it, who is not going to be changing their diet, or just chuck it and get your environment to fit what it is that you are wanting to do. So that's the first step in the new year for people who are wanting to make a change, is to make sure that your environment is supporting the change. And part of that is really considering eating out too, because like you said, restaurants, you may think that this meal that you're being served doesn't have certain things in it, but you just never know what they're putting in things. And even if you ask for oil-free, a lot of times, I don't know about you, but I've ordered things from places that they've said oil-free, and then you get it back and it's like, well, I'm pretty sure that there's oil in that. It's just hard not to eat the way that you want to when you're having someone else prepare the food for you.
Absolutely. And, there's still oil in the cookware and on the grill. And the good thing about going to vegan restaurants is at least, there's no animal products in the cookware. But they don't clean the grill or clean the pan, when you order your food. I can tell you that.
Right. So I think getting your environment prepared and then just being familiar with that. And then I think for me, the things that help me are really preparing and planning. And I don't really have to do too much because, like I said, we kind of go between 4 or 5 meals that are very similar. So we do a lot of potatoes. We love mashed potatoes and gravy. And so we make that all the time. And I know you have an Instant Pot, and we love ours, especially for making potatoes. So I'll just throw a bunch of potatoes in there. They get nice and soft, and then I just whip them up into mashed potatoes, and dinner's ready in 20 minutes. And then I just make a really easy gravy recipe. So that's one of the things that we'll use a lot. And then we love burrito bowls because they're really simple. So we just do rice and beans and whatever you want on the top, salsa, tomatoes, onion. We keep it pretty simple. A little avocado for my son. He loves avocado. And I think a little avocado is fine. That's a whole plant food. Just being careful not to have it at every meal, because I know for some people, when you eat a lot of it, it can deter weight loss for some people. And gosh, so we do potatoes, burrito bowls a lot. We also do kind of more of like an Asian type food where we'll do rice or maybe barley with vegetables. So we'll do steamed broccoli or steamed cauliflower and sometimes we'll do tofu. So we'll do air fried tofu. I just chop up tofu into pieces and throw it in the air fryer till it crisps up. I don't even put any sort of sauce on it. And then we just put it in with our rice and veggies. And in the past, I would use a little bit of low sodium soy sauce, and still sometimes we'll use that. But I've really enjoyed the California balsamic vinegars because they're salt-free and sugar-free. And so I use the teriyaki one a lot for that meal. It's really good.
Yeah, me too. And I find I'm too lazy to make sauces now, because with all those flavors, who needs to?
Right. Well, and I found that I eat a lot more salad now because I love their dressing so much. So I love the Gilroy garlic, and there's a basil one that's really good. My husband loves the sweet heat. Yeah. So there's a lot of good flavors.
He has a new ginger one. If you're a ginger lover, I'm not a ginger hater, but if you love ginger, you're going to love the new ginger one. So got a couple of questions for you, Dr. Davis. One was on tofu and tempeh, what you think about those.
Yeah. So I think soy is great. Of course, there's a spectrum. So the first thing would be the best would be to get it through the whole plant food, which is the edamame. And if you don't want to do that, then the next best would be tofu or tempeh or soy milk. Those would be the least processed. And then after that, you're kind of getting into the downslope where it gets more processed, and they're pulling protein out of the soy protein isolate that you'll read on boxes a lot, is where they're just pulling protein out of the edamame basically, and using that protein for the food. So it's highly processed. So I am totally fine with tofu and tempeh. We use it in our home. It is something that's a little bit higher in fat. So for people who are not wanting to, who are worried about weight gain or not maintaining their weight, I just wouldn't say just don't eat a block of tofu at every meal. But I think it is actually a really important thing to have in your diet. They've shown that in places where women eat more soy, that they have less breast cancer. So now they're saying that soy is actually protective against breast cancer. So that's a good reason to make sure that you're incorporating soy in some form or another, just for that health benefit alone.
Yeah. There's a question, what's your favorite salt-free seasoning? You mentioned sumac is one, which is just naturally salt-free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that one because it kind of has a lemony, tangy taste to it, and it's ground up, and so it looks black or brownish color, and so you just kind of sprinkle it over the top the same way you would salt. So you don't cook with it necessarily. I'm sure you could, but we just use it just to sprinkle over. So for instance, I'll make hash browns for breakfast a lot, and we'll just sprinkle the sumac berries right over the top. The other thing that I like to use, I love garlic powder, onion powder, just for kind of a seasoning. Costco also has a good salt-free seasoning. You can buy in like a big jug. I don't even know exactly everything that's in it, but it's salt-free, and it's just got a lot of different things in there that are tasty. So I'd say that those are probably the main ones that we use.
Right. Yeah. I know Mary McDougall likes the Costco one too. It's got like, I think 21 things in it. And
Yeah.
I think they sell a similar one, or maybe even the same one at Trader Joe's.
Ah.
Yeah. So that's good to know. Let's see. I saw a question about, how do you make your gravy?
So I use a McDougall recipe. So they've got a golden gravy and a creamy golden gravy that are both really good. They have, so one of them calls for tahini, the other one doesn't. So on a special occasion, sometimes we'll do the one that has tahini in it, which is going to be a little bit higher in fat. When we just are talking about just our regular mashed potatoes and try to do it once a week or twice a week, we try to stick to just the regular golden gravy. And both of those recipes are online if you just search for McDougall golden gravy or creamy golden gravy recipe. And I think that they call for soy sauce if you want to, so you don't need to. So that would add a little bit of salt if you didn't want to have salt in it. And they also call for some veggie broth, which again, you don't need to have salt in veggie broth. Although if you buy it packaged, you just have to be careful because it can have salt in it. But those are both really good gravy recipes.
And I have two gravy recipes in my new book, Own Your Health. One was with mushrooms, and it's now available on Audible. And if you send us your receipt, you get a bunch of bonuses. So shameless plug.
Nice. Well, and AJ, I would love to try another gravy recipe, so I'll have to try yours.
Yeah, and I like it. It's made with it's got a lot of mushrooms. So if you like mushrooms, I think you'd be a fan. So yeah, really, they're supposed to be really good for you, especially cooked. That's what I hear. Becca says, where does choline and biotin come from on a plant-based diet? I've never worried about that, and I don't know.
So what did she say? What was the first one?
Choline and biotin.
So I think that she's talking about something to do with proteins. I'm not sure.
Maybe she could clarify, but
Yeah.
I've never known that to be an issue.
And I'll say this, that on a plant-based diet, you do not lack anything. The only thing that you need to worry about is B12. That's something that is found in the soil that is made by bacteria. So it's not something that is necessarily lacking in a plant-based diet. It's just something that because of modern agriculture and washing our vegetables and fruits, so we're getting the dirt that would normally have B12 in it off of our plants, that we need to supplement for that. So, and a lot of people are deficient in B12, even who aren't plant-based, because of that. So it's important to get B12, but as far as any other micronutrients, you get everything absolutely that you need from a plant-based diet, as long as you're somewhat eating a varied diet. It doesn't have to be super crazy and varied, but as long as you're eating somewhat varied with some starches, so starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, beans, things like that, rice, and then your non-starchy vegetables, broccoli, chard, kale, things like that, and then your fruits. So fruits are going to also bring you some of the vitamins that you need that, for instance, rice doesn't have, like vitamins A and C. So you just need to make sure that you're getting a little bit of fruit too, but you won't be missing out on anything.
Right. So Ming says, some people tell me I need a tablespoon of oil a day for my skin and lubrication for joints. I don't think this is true. Is it? What can I say in response to that?
Right. So it's so interesting what's out there, lubricating your joints with oil that you eat. It doesn't even make sense to me. So your body makes lubrication products for your joints so that your joints can move seamlessly. So you have lubrication in there already. There is no reason that you need to be taking oil in. The only thing that you're doing when you're eating high fat products such as oil is you're taking it from your mouth, and your mouth is taking it into your body. It's not even really changing it at all. It's just kind of staying in exactly what it looks like when you're eating it. And it just puts it into a spot on your body to store it for later. So if you imagine that when you're having that teaspoon or tablespoon of oil, just imagine it from once it reaches your mouth, it's just going to be stored onto your body. Your body does not like to try to change fat into sugar to use it for energy. It prefers glucose. That is one of the things that your body just wants, is glucose to make energy. And the only reason it would go for fat instead of that is when it doesn't have the glucose, when you're starving it of glucose. So in instances when you're starving, when you are not eating anything and you've depleted your stores of glucose in your liver even, then it will say, okay, fine, I will take the fat and change that into sugar for you.
Wow. There's a comment from Susan. Wasn't oil used for skin and religious anointing historically? When I tried to research when this actually putting in our mouth started, it was very hard to find an exact date. What I found is that it was a prize used in Olympic Games that people put on their skin, but it wasn't until recently that people started putting it in their mouth.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think a lot of people will use it on their skin, and I think that for the most part, you're not getting it to go into your blood system very much. And so I don't think that it's a huge issue to put some, I know some people like to use coconut oil and things like that to try to hydrate their skin. So I think a little bit of that is just fine. But I would say if you've got coconut oil, never put it in your food. That's number one. Just don't eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't understand why anyone would think a processed food could have more benefit than the whole food from what it came from. That's the other thing, like you say, if you think you need coconut oil, eat coconut. If you think you need olive oil, eat olives.
Yes.
Candace says, well, doesn't salt also create inflammation?
Yeah, there actually is some data that looks at that in people, that it looks like it possibly can lead to some inflammation in the body. It's just that if you think about when you're eating salt, your body needs to compensate because you have salt in your body already. So when you're eating excess salt, your body needs to use water as a compensation, which is why you get so thirsty after eating salt, because it needs to basically displace that salt by using the water so that you're not getting so overwhelmed with salt in the body. So it's a process that your body needs to go through to take over and make sure that it gets diluted properly so that your bloodstream isn't carrying too much salt load in it. So I think it makes sense to me that eating excess salt is not good for the body.
Great. Thank you. Loretta has a great question. Do avocado and other plant fats raise cholesterol?
That is a good question. I think that it is possible that some higher fat vegan foods can lead to cholesterol being elevated. And I don't know what the mechanism is for that. I just know from patients' experiences, my experience, that when I myself lowered the fat in my diet, and I'm not just talking about avocados or nuts, which are whole foods, but I'm talking about the more processed high fat things such as oils and vegan butters, that once you eliminate that, I have seen people's cholesterol drop, and my own dropped. I was telling you earlier when I was working with Dr. McDougall that my total cholesterol, actually with my LDL cholesterol, so the bad cholesterol dropped 20 points within about 9 days when I was working with Dr. McDougall. So I can definitely see that if you are eating more of a junk food, vegan or plant-based diet with higher fats, that could possibly lead to some excess cholesterol. But I think that when you're having the whole foods, so some avocados, some nuts here and there, I don't see that is harmful. And I think that because they're whole foods, as long as you're not indulging and going crazy on those kinds of things, that's okay.
It's so funny because I have found that even people that don't indulge or go crazy, if they've already been overweight, they can't really get away with a lot of them and lose weight and maintain.
Yeah, and that's true too, because if you figure the longer that you live either overweight or obese, the longer your body has been that way, it is harder to come back from. Now, I know there are lots of people out there who have been obese or overweight for most of their lives, and then they're able to make that change and they're able to lose a lot of weight. But I also do know of some people who've made the change to going plant-based that have struggled more than others. And it's just hard to know who that person is going to be, but some people have to be more strict than others. Some people can be at their goal weight and have no problem eating lots of avocado and nuts, and then other people just can't. So I know that for myself personally, I love avocado and nuts, but I just try to eat them sparingly.
Right. And if you can, because some people can and some people can't. That's why I think it's important to know yourself. But if what you're doing isn't working, try something else. Because if you went 3 weeks without nuts, seeds, and avocado or oil, you're not going to die.
Exactly.
I promise. So Michelle says, don't you need some salt in your diet? My understanding is you need sodium, which is an essential mineral, but you don't need table salt. And if you eat a lot of greens, you get a lot of sodium.
Yes. So what makes up salt, sodium chloride, those are easily found in plant foods. So what I think some people worry about is maybe iodine, because iodine comes in table salt, but you can get iodine pretty easily by just making sure you're getting good sources of iodine, like sea vegetables and things like that. So
Mandy says, how is your son? Are broccoli and tofu still his favorite foods?
Oh, he's doing wonderful. Yes, he loves broccoli and tofu. I would say, I think probably tofu is his favorite right now. And it's gross to me, but when I'm chopping up tofu, he will come by and just snag a handful and just eat it raw. He just loves it.
That's cute.
But I was so proud the other night. We were having just roasted vegetables. So no seasoning whatsoever. It was just roasted vegetables. And I think we did sweet potatoes, carrots, and broccoli. And he finished his entire plate and he asked for more broccoli. And I just thought, how amazing is this? You just hear about all these kids who are struggling to eat vegetables and just couldn't even imagine eating vegetables. And here I've got this kid that's asking for more broccoli. But then you look back and this is just everything that he's known. I mean, I was vegan before he was even born. And so he's been plant-based his entire life. And this is the food that he grew up with. This is what he knows. And so it's what he craves.
Yep, which eat today, you'll crave tomorrow. Absolutely. Yeah. Where did that question go? Why does it move? Oh, from Andrea. Are soy curls okay? I've always been fascinated by the word okay, because I always say, okay, for what? For health, for weight loss? I don't know, but are they okay?
All right. So I would be happy to talk about soy curls. Soy curls are pressed edamame. So edamame is the soybean. So they've been pressed down and then shredded, basically ripped apart and dried. So we were talking earlier about kind of the line of soy products. So if you've got edamame over here, and then you've got maybe the Impossible Burger over here, that soy curls, I would say, are more over here. So you've got tofu and tempeh and soy curls, although it's not something that is found in the ground or off of a tree is pretty minimally processed compared to some other faux meats that I think if you're going to look at eating something that you want to use as a transition from eating meat to eating more plant-based, that soy curls is not the worst thing. I think it's something that I would choose if it were something that I was looking to replace. So I think it's a good option for some people, definitely.
It's great. Thank you. Let's see. I'm allergic to soy, so I never got to try them. Is it like a meat substitute, or is it like a pasta substitute?
It's like a meat substitute. It looks almost like a shredded chicken or something. And I haven't eaten meat in so long, but it really does. And it's kind of got like a chewy texture to it. So I think for some people who are looking to get that replacement product for meat, I think it would probably be one of the best options out there if you're looking for something that's very similar. The other thing would be jackfruit, because jackfruit, you can marinate it and it doesn't taste like a fruit anymore, and it can be very savory, and you can pull it apart, kind of like I've heard pulled pork. It can be kind of
I've used jackfruit and I like it. And like you say, that it's a whole food. But we had a earlier show today, and she made 3 plant-based burgers, and I'm like, they were amazing. All different kinds and flavors. So
that's great.
Yeah. So there's a question: can you get enough B12 from nutritional yeast? That not if it's not fortified, because most of the doctors recommend if you're going to have nutritional yeast, have it non-fortified. If it's not fortified, there's no B12 in it.
Right, exactly. So there are things that are fortified with B12. So nutritional yeast does not naturally come with B12. So I think that for anyone who's looking to get B12 into their diet, I would just get a supplement. That's just what I would go for, because you just never know if you're getting enough, and you just want to make sure that you're not devoid of that nutrient.
Right. So there's a question: what foods are high in magnesium besides nuts and seeds? And it's so interesting because, like, Dr. Lyle talks about this, I believe it's chapter 4 of The Pleasure Trap, looking for health in all the wrong places. These questions on choline and biotin and magnesium. People are so worried about deficiencies when the real problem isn't deficiencies in this world, it's excesses.
Well, right. And I know these we get these questions about these particular nutrients or vitamins. And really, at the end of the day, if you're just eating 100% plant foods, and we said earlier, somewhat varied. So as long as you're just not eating brown rice for every single meal with nothing else, as long as you're having somewhat of a varied diet and trying to use different colors of foods, you're going to have no problem getting plenty of magnesium. If you're deficient in magnesium, there's something else going on if you're eating plant-based.
Right. Craig says, what about people who claim that salt is good for runners?
So I have not heard that salt is good for runners. And I honestly can't imagine why that would be, because if you're eating a lot of salt, you're just getting more thirsty. And that's one thing. If you're doing long runs, being more thirsty and having to take on more water is not a great idea.
Right. So you've got a couple of really cool programs coming up. One is a retreat. One is like a free workshop. Why don't you talk about those? I put the links in the show notes, and by show notes, guys, I mean, you got to look below the video. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it. Facebook, you won't see it. But if you're saying, I don't see it on YouTube, you just have to refresh your screen. I promise you it's there.
So yeah, I got together with a local group. I think it's a Plant Pure community, if you're familiar with those. It's called Salt Lake Thrive. So we put on a free event about breast cancer in October, and I believe you can actually search for that. That's available. We talk about soy in that one. But in this one that we're going to be doing, it's going to be on January 6th at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So that would be 5 o'clock for you, AJ. But 6 p.m. on January 6th, it's a free event, and you can go to my website to sign up for it. It's just drnikidavis.com, drnikidavis.com. And I've got a link on there that just shows upcoming events, and it's on there. So that one's going to be a fun one because it'll be an interactive webinar type thing where I'll be talking about how to eat healthier in the new year. So we will talk about things like why eating a low carb or ketogenic type diet is not recommended for the general public. And then I will go into talking about what about a plant-based diet is good for health. So we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of a plant-based diet, not only how and why it's good for you, but how to go about transitioning to a plant-based diet. So that'll be a fun 1-hour webinar on the 6th. And then I'm also doing a workshop, a Saturday workshop that following Saturday. So on the 9th, there are going to be 2 workshops that I'm doing that are going to be 2 hours each. And that's with a local healthcare provider here as well. Now, these events are both virtual. So just so you're aware, I'm doing everything from home now. But this Saturday workshop will be fun because we're going to also talk about how to transition to a plant-based diet, but we're also going to include some food demos and a meal plan, some things to really get you started in the new year. And then finally, the one that I'm really excited about is a virtual plant-based retreat. And that's going to be February 5th through February 14th. And Chef AJ is actually going to be coming on to do a food demo for us during that. But I would say it's very similar to Dr. McDougall's programs, where he does the 10-day live-in programs, which are now virtual. But it'll be kind of similar to that, where it will be medically supervised. So you'll have me as your physician if you are needing to get off medications, or maybe you just want to go over blood work, or you just want to make this change to being able to go to plant-based and making sure that you're doing it safely. The difference in my retreat is that I include food. So I will be sending fresh meals to people through Mama Says, so that you'll have meals that you can eat during the time of the retreat. And not only will you have me as your doctor during that time, but you'll also have your own lifestyle coach. And that's someone who's going to be working with you throughout the retreat and then up to a year after the retreat. And that's all included. So I'm really excited about this one. It's meant for people who really want to thrust into that change and make it a permanent change, and then have support along the way to be able to do that. Terrific.
Well, I've been posting the link so people can sign up for it. A few people already have. There is a question from April on oxalate sensitivity on a plant-based diet. I would like to transition, but for some reason I'm making calcium oxalate stones and I need some guidance.
Yeah, so that is something where there are some people who seem to be sensitive to that. And I think you just have to be careful with the more oxalate containing foods. And I know that if you're eating greens, for instance, spinach is one of those that is higher in oxalates. So putting together a list of those higher oxalate containing foods, and just looking at making a transition to a different food. So for instance, if spinach, it has too many oxalates in it, then you could switch over to something like kale, and just making those kinds of switches and see if that helps. But again, I am not giving any medical advice here. This is just education. So at the end of the day, if you are concerned about something like that, I would say mention it to your doctor as well.
Great. There's a question where does Seitan fall?
Good question. So Seitan is a little bit different, and I don't eat that very much, but if I remember right, I think it's a gluten product. Do you know, Chef AJ?
Yeah, it's made from wheat.
Yeah, so I think it's wheat gluten based. So that would be something that would be a little bit more on the processed scale, because it's using wheat and the gluten to make this kind of chewy texture. So for people who are looking at using Seitan, I think it's for sure better than some of the more processed faux meats out there. We're talking about the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger and things like that. Now, those are great for people who are just wanting to go vegan. And I fully support people who are transitioning from meat to going vegan to use those products when you need to, but they're definitely not health foods. But Seitan, I would say, is better than those, but it's not as good as others. And we talked about soy curls earlier. I would say soy curls are less processed. And so that's what I would use over that. And especially for people there are some people who are sensitive to wheat. And so if that's something that you're sensitive to, then maybe staying away from Seitans, which is made out of wheat gluten, is a good idea.
Yeah. I agree. Let's see if there's any more questions. Da, 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 da. Oh, okay, sorry.
Did you see my nice shirt I got for Christmas? My husband gave it to me.
Love it. You know who would love that is John Pierre. Be kind. I love it. Yeah. Cooking. Cooking. Does cooking greens help versus eating them raw? Mandy wants to know.
Well, cooking really what it does to foods is it just breaks them down. So chewing foods also breaks them down. Ultimately, for greens, I think if you can eat them raw, great. Your body, by chewing it, will break it down into the substances that your body can digest. But I also love to make a wilted kale salad here and there, and I think it's just fine. By cooking them down, it is going to take some of the nutrients out. And I know, AJ, don't you drink the juice that is left over from
Okay, that's so funny. Caught in the act. I'm drinking it now. I love it. It's called pot liquor because I'm actually freezing because, I mean, I moved to the desert to be warm, and oh my God, it's like freezing here today. It's 68. How are you supposed to live when it's this cold?
68. My goodness.
I know you're in Montana, aren't you?
Well, not anymore. So I was in Montana, but we just moved back to our home in Salt Lake City, Utah. But it's pretty similar. We get snow, it's cold. So it was cold here today. I think we're in the 30s today. So I would be happy to have something in the 60s.
Oh my God. I guess that, you know, like they say, people neuroadapt to food without sugar, oil, salt. You neuroadapt to your environmental temperature too, because I'm so used to it being, you know, it doesn't get humid here. So even when it's like 110, it's lovely. So 68 to me is like, oh my God, it's like freezing. But that's so funny.
You're in Palm Springs, is that right?
Yeah, really close to Palm Springs. Yep.
Yeah. So I traveled through there when I was interviewing for residencies, and I just loved it there. It's just gorgeous.
Oh my God, why don't you move here? Because we don't have any plant-based doctors. You could really open. No, not at all. I mean, there is one doctor who happens to be vegan personally, but he's a trainer. He trains residents. So his practice isn't, he, you know, I asked if I could see him. He goes, well, it's not like a normal kind of doctor-patient thing. He said you could, but it really wouldn't be. He didn't advise it. So there isn't, to my knowledge, there's not a single practicing lifestyle medicine doctor in all of the Coachella Valley. We have to go all the way to Riverside County or Loma Linda to see people like Dr. Wayne Dysinger. You guys somebody that did that and opened up a retreat would do very well here, because we have a lot of people who are older and sicker and they have a lot of time on their hands and a lot of money. So we just need somebody to come and open up a center. And I don't want to necessarily work full time in it, but I'd help you do a few classes and get some.
I would love that. Well, my mom lives in Phoenix, and so I've actually talked to her about the possibility of doing a retreat in Palm Springs because it is pretty close by.
It's about I think it's only about a 4-hour drive, and I'm telling you, the real estate is so affordable here.
Is it really? That's so surprising.
I'll talk to you later. Absolutely. Like, I mean, it'd be different if you were renting like a very expensive hotel in Palm Springs, but to buy something, are you kidding?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh my God. Let's talk. That would be a dream come true, because there is nothing like that here. I mean, it could be like a McDougall program / True North in the desert. It'd be amazing.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. So everybody's asking about your adorable son, and how is he?
My normal son, is that what you said?
No, not normal. I mean, not that he's not. No. They're not. Gina says, how is your adorable son? Speak English.
He's still very adorable. If people have seen him on, I think it was the last time I was on with you, we did a little food demonstration, a little cooking, and he's got this gorgeous light blonde hair. I think it's almost longer than mine now. And it's lighter than mine because, you know, with COVID, I'm not coloring my hair anymore. But he's doing fantastic. He's, like we said, he's been plant-based since birth. So it's been fun to see how well he does. And he's just thriving, and he's such a great kid. So he's having a lot of fun. He had a great Christmas yesterday. So he's been playing with a lot of his new toys that he got yesterday.
Oh, that's nice. So somebody's asking for my pot liquor recipe. So here it is. I take I take, the only reason I use 1 3/4 cup of water is because then I know it fits perfectly in this 27-ounce clean canteen, which keeps it hot for a very long time. So I take a bag of Cruciferous Crunch, which is from Trader Joe's. It's 10 ounces, 1 3/4 cup of water, 5 minutes on the Instant Pot. I give my husband the greens. I drink the pot liquor, and it's delicious, and I love it. So yeah. But April saying, I need to lose a lot of weight. Can anybody recommend a plan? Yeah, it's mine for one. And Dr. Davis has a workshop on that. And I have lots of groups and lots of programs. As a matter of fact, we are starting one in about 8 or 10 hours. We're having a free Ultimate Reboot workshop. So I've been posting the link to that. So yeah, but just in general, a plant-based diet that's unprocessed and free of oil, that's a weight loss plan right there, even if you didn't want to go all the way with the sugar and the oil and the flour.
Absolutely. There are people out there that have done it all by themselves, and then there are people that want to have help doing it. So you can go either way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if there's.
I mean, I guess I wish that back when I went vegan and vegetarian, that it would have been nice to have help for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I struggled, especially because I was the only one. I was 13 when I decided to give up meat, and I didn't know anybody else who was vegetarian at the time. And it was back when people still kind of knew what vegetarian was, but you were weird to be vegetarian. And then veganism was not even something on people's radar. You were vegan at the time, I'm sure, but it was just something where, I mean, even my dad still says vegan. He still doesn't understand the word.
It's so funny. It is hilarious. So a couple of people, at least 3, have commented about hair loss. And so I've asked them if they've lost weight, because I've heard that when people lose weight quickly, they sometimes experience temporary hair loss. But I don't think it's the vegan diet that's necessarily causing them to lose hair. What have you heard about hair loss when people are on a vegan diet?
Yeah. So if you are experiencing hair loss, first of all, it's not a bad idea to talk to your doctor about it, because there are other things that can cause it. But if you've recently lost a lot of weight, your body has gone through some stress. So even though weight loss is good, it's still stressful to your body that it's going through this change. So there are people that when they go through some sort of a stressful situation, it could be mentally stressful, but it also could be your body that's stressed, that can actually cause you to have, as you said, AJ, temporary hair loss. It is something that usually will work itself out after a few months, that you'll start to notice that it's growing back again, and then it's not as much anymore. You think back to someone who has been pregnant before, that when you are pregnant, you typically have a lot of hair growth during pregnancy. And then when you go through the stress of having the childbirth and the baby's born, and now your body is kind of readjusting to the new normal, then you have a big shed. And so it's kind of similar to that, where you're having your body going through a big experience, you're shedding some of that hair, but typically you should have regrowth if it's just a temporary loss from the stress on your body.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, what I love about Dr. McDougall is one of the things he's always said, the truth is simple and easy to understand. And there's just so much noise about there with these diets and lectins and things like that. And, I'm always hearing about these new diets. Like I had a client today, and she was doing something that it was so bizarre. I'm trying to remember what it was. It had to do with eating beans. It was called the bean diet protocol. And basically you were eating 3 cups of beans a day. And I said, if you're losing weight doing that, it's not, I looked at the diet online. I said, it's not because of the 3 cups of beans. It's because she's not allowing sugar and flour and coffee and alcohol in any processed foods. So there's nothing magical about eating a bunch of beans, eating it with meat. And that's what people don't understand, is that there's no gimmicks. So there's no tricks. Eating a well-balanced whole food plant-based diet without oil. I mean, if people want to have sugar and salt, I mean, whatever, if they can afford calorically to have nuts and flour, that's one thing. I don't think alcohol is good for anybody, but it's never not worked. And Dr. McDougall and Dr. Goldhamer, they've seen thousands of patients in 30 years. They've never seen it not work. And when it hasn't worked, they're not doing it the way they teach it.
Right. Well, and I remember Dr. McDougall mentioning as well, he would say, if you want to go full in on this McDougall diet, whole food, plant-based, high starch, that's great. But if you just can't get yourself to go and make this big change, he said, what you can do is just add some sort of a starch in the day. So you're not taking away any of your foods that you already eat. You're just adding the starch. And what he finds is it's not that it's the magic of the starch, but it's that you are eating a potato. So for instance, he'll say, eat 4 potatoes in a day. Just make sure that you get 4 potatoes in. It's kind of like the 3 cups of beans. As long as you get those in, what happens is you're filling up your stomach on that food as opposed to something else that you would have eaten. So it might have been a chicken salad or a meat burrito or something like that. But that instead of having that, now you're having this potato. And so that's where you really get the benefit, is by switching over to that other food. So the beans aren't necessarily magical, although they do have a lot of great properties in them. But just by adding that to your normal diet, you are replacing other unhealthy foods.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just saw a question from Ming about weight loss. I maintain my weight great even when eating potatoes and grains, but when I actually want to lose weight, I have to cut way down on carbs. Is this normal? Again, I hate that word carbs, because vegetables are carbs, not starchy vegetable.
Yeah, I know. It's just become a normal way to talk. And unfortunately, not only are people talking this way about carbs, it's physicians talking that way too. I would hear some of my peers talking to their patients about, make sure that you have diabetes, limit your carbs. But if you really look at what are carbs, okay, first of all, they're carbohydrates. It's one of the 3 macronutrients that you need. So there's carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And a carbohydrate is basically just a long chain of sugars. And it's also can be known as a starch. So you're looking at that all plant foods are going to have carbohydrates in them, and some are just going to have more carbohydrates than others. And those ones are the ones that we call starch. So starchy foods like potatoes or beans or corn or peas, things like that, rice, grains. So yeah, I think that if you are having an issue with weight gain, I would not look at the carbs, maybe the quality of the carbohydrates. So if you're looking at, if you are eating a lot of pastas and breads and things that are just more calorically dense, then that might be where you're having an issue. It might just be the calorie density. But if you're eating whole plant foods and you're getting the carbohydrates from the plant foods, even if you're eating higher starch plant foods, that is not something that I have ever seen people gain weight with.
Right.
So carbohydrates are not the enemy.
Absolutely. And
they're my best friend.
Absolutely. That's how many of us have gotten thin, and it creates satiety. So how do we achieve our health goals, Dr. Davis, in 2021?
So first of all, eat plant-based. So eat plants. That's number one. You got to eat plants. And in order to do that, really what you want to do is make sure your environment supports you. So getting rid of all the bad foods in your house, just throwing them away, donating them, whatever you got to do, make your environment match what your goal is for the new year. So we talked about this. You want to get rid of the oils, the butters, whether they're vegan or not, getting rid of all the meats, the faux meats, the cheeses, the faux cheeses, and just making sure that everything that you are doing in your environment is going to be supportive of your goal. Now, if you don't have support in your home for as far as people, then you reach out to a community. There are plenty of online communities that you can join where you can talk to others who are in the same situation as you if you're wanting to try to make those changes for the new year. So having a community is also important. And then the other thing that I found is keeping things really, really simple. So coming up with a few meals that you like that are just so easy to throw together. And sometimes that means prepping them in advance. So I love to bake up a bunch of potatoes all at once so that I can just grab one the next day and then put some yummy sauce over the top of it. I also like to make a lot of rice, and then I'll just have it for the next day. I can just put it into a bowl, heat it up, and throw on my beans and my salsa and have a nice burrito bowl. So you just got to make sure that it's really, really simple. And part of that is going to be just making sure that you're prepared for when you do have cravings and when you're hungry, that you've got something you can reach for that's going to be healthy.
Yes, and another tip is to sign up for Dr. Davis's free workshop on January 6th, where you can discover the power of plants for weight loss and for the new year and for life. And I've been posting the link all along. It's in the show notes, but I'll put it here one more time. Click on it, register. It's absolutely free, as is my Ultimate Reboot, which starts tonight, which I've posted a link for as well. So one last question, because it keeps coming up. Sandy wants to know, can you eat too many fresh sprouts? Fresh sprouts. There was no H, sorry.
Oh, fresh sprouts?
Yes, fresh sprouts.
So I guess I wonder what is too many, because now I'm imagining someone with just a big pile of them, shoving them in their face. I would say fresh sprouts are great. I know a lot of people who will sprout their own and eat them, and they have a lot of vitamins and minerals in them. So I think if you're using that as something that you're topping over salads, that's great. I don't see any issue with that kind of a thing.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being my first guest, my second guest, and now my, what number is it? 359th guest.
I like that, a nice odd number.
Okay. Well, I can't wait for your workshop, and I can't wait for your retreat, and I can't wait for you to move to the desert and open up a center.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Chef AJ. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Take care. And thank you all for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when we have another wonderful plant-based doctor, very inspiring, Dr. Stefan Esser. Thanks, Dr. Davis. Take care. Bye-bye.